Is the threat from ISIL over? It took the Iraqi army 9 months of fierce fighting to finally declare Mosul liberated. Iraq's Prime Minister says recapturing the ISIL stronghold is a great victory. How will government leaders in Baghdad build on their success? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Hazem Seeker. The 9-month-long battle for Mosul is all but over. The job of repairing the enormous damage done by ISIL is just beginning. The United Nations says at least 6 districts are destroyed, and repairing only basic infrastructure could cost $1 billion. As well as the thousands killed, around 900,000 people have fled since the offensive began last October. It is not clear when they'll be able to return home. Iraqi government troops are clearing the last pockets of resistance from a few remaining ISIL fighters. Iraq's Prime Minister is already hailing the army's victory.
I've come to Mosul today to follow up on our victories and on the eradication of ISIL, which we are close to achieving. ISIL fighters have chosen to be besieged because they have been given 2 options in the past: surrender or death. Most of them chose to die. Only a small number chose surrender. Most ISIL fighters in Mosul have been killed, and just a few are left now. I will leave some room for the heroic armed forces to complete this action so we can announce victory soon, God willing.
So how did ISIL come about? Well, the rise of the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant spurred much debate around its origins and notorious rule. It made headlines 3 years ago when fighters seized large areas of Syria and Iraq, including its second largest city, Mosul, and its Syrian stronghold, Raqqa. ISIL formally declared the establishment of a so-called caliphate, a state governed by Islamic law. The group claimed supreme authority and demanded Muslims worldwide pledge allegiance to ISIL's leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. ISIL aims to restore what it describes as God's rule on earth and to defend the Muslim community against what it calls infidels and enemies, such as the US-led coalition. Since then, ISIL influence has expanded beyond Syria and Iraq by claiming attacks in Egypt, Libya, and European countries, including France, Belgium, and the United Kingdom. And following the defeat in Mosul, where the group's next foothold could be open to question. So let's bring in our guest now. Joining us in Baghdad, we have Ahmed Rushdie. He is the director of the House of Iraqi Expertise Foundation. Joining us from Erbil in northern Iraq is Brigadier General Hazhar Ismail, member of the KRG Ministry of Peshmerga Affairs. And finally, we have Matthew Glanville, former advisor to the American military and British Army soldier who fought in Iraq between 2006 and 2008. He joins us from Lincoln in the UK via Skype. Good to have you all with us, gentlemen. So, Ahmed Rushdie, this obviously the Iraqi government claiming this as a huge victory for the Iraqi people, but the real work is with the rebuilding effort, and we've seen the pictures of devastation of whole neighborhoods of Mosul. Where do you even begin with this rebuilding effort? Where's the money going to come from?
Well, actually, first of all, there is a real plan. It's supposed to be written and organized by the Iraqi government with the help of the international community, between brackets the UNDP, that how we can deal with the whole issue of rebuilding Mosul again. That's why the UN actually announced for the $1 billion the cost of the rebuilding of Mosul. And it's supposed to be that it will start with the infrastructure, then after that going to head it to the other governmental institutes and also education institutes and so on. The most important thing is that there are so many talks here in Baghdad is the money will come from the Gulf countries. They're going to assist in rebuilding the city of Mosul, and also because of the good connection, or let's say good relationship that have been built now between Al-Abadi and the Gulf countries, it started again the talk about we're going to pay the money, it will go to the central government, then it will be in the hands of the UNDP with the project to rebuild all these cities.
Hazar Ismail, this effort to defeat ISIL in Mosul is one that, as we said, lasted 9 months. It involved a coalition of various armies and armed groups that included Kurdish fighters. Are you concerned now that the common enemy that united them, now that they have been pretty much defeated on the ground, that the old divisions in Iraq will reappear?
First, I would like to say congrats to the Iraqi people and to the people of Mosul, and congrats to the Iraqi security forces and for the Peshmerga forces and the coalition forces. As you mentioned, now we are very close to defeat ISIS militarily in Mosul, with great cooperation between the Iraqi security forces and Peshmerga forces, with a great support from the coalition forces. Now, as I said, we are very close to defeat ISIS militarily, especially in Mosul, but still they are in some other area outside of the Mosul of city. So hopefully we'll have a common plan or a joint plan between the Iraqi security forces and the Peshmerga forces to defeating them outside of the city of Mosul. You know, I'm always saying ISIS, it will be defeated in Mosul militarily, but as an organization they will remain, and as an ideology they will remain. So we should do more and cooperate more and help each other to defeat the ISIS ideology and ISIS as an organization.
But back to my original question, which was about the differences among the various groups in Iraq. I mean, obviously you are united by this common enemy, and the battle to defeat them is something that is going to continue. But many people will say it was the kind of divisions within Mosul that helped to give rise to ISIL, that this was a Shia-dominated government, and that many people in Iraq, whether you're talking about Kurds, Arabs, Sunnis, felt that they were marginalized. What's being done to address that? Doesn't more need to be done to address that?
We should do more. We should cooperate more, especially between the Iraqi federal government, Kurdistan regional government, with the people in Mosul, Sunni population, between Kurd, Arab, Sunni, Shia, everybody with a minority, because still we have ISIS. We have a threat. You know, in the beginning, ISIS, they took advantage of the bad policy. Let me say, they took advantage of the bad policy of the former Iraqi government, Maliki's government, and they took advantage of the civil war in Syria. Many Sunni population joined Daesh because at that time, because of the bad policies. But now the Iraqi federal government, they should have a clear plan for reconciliation, for rebuilding the city of Mosul, for providing services. Still almost more than a million people outside the city of Mosul. They need to return to their homes. They need services. So still there is a lot of work. The Iraqi federal government, they should cooperate with everybody in order to rebuild the cities, not just Mosul and other cities, and cooperate with the people and give a guarantee to the people that ISIS will not show up again. And as you know, ISIS, they made genocide against the minority in the Mosul plain, like against the Christian, against Yazidi. So those minorities, they need a guarantee. What's the guarantee? So should the Iraqi government give them a guarantee that the genocide will not happen again? So about that, there is a lot of things. The Iraqi federal government, they should provide a very good plan, especially for, in the beginning, for providing services, then rebuilding the city, then reconciliation.
All right. Matthew Glanville, isn't there a danger that the political and economic conditions that gave rise to ISIL, some of which we've just been talking about, will continue to fester if the fundamental problems are not addressed now?
Yes, there is a very profound danger. The alienation of the Sunni community has been addressed somewhat by the Abadi government, but there is a lot more that they could do. I think we need to see more Sunni recruitment into the army. We need to see the demobilization of the Shia popular mobilization fronts. And we need a much more inclusive approach to particularly the Sunni community broadly in the west of Iraq. And we need to make sure that Sunnis feel that they have services from their government, they have support from their government, that they have access to government jobs and to government finances. Otherwise, I think what we may see is Islamic State, in the same way as Al-Qaeda in Iraq, disappeared for a while around 2009, 2010, 2011, but then came back as it fed on this sense of Sunni grievance.
Ahmed Rushdie, I mean, defeating the enemy on the ground is one thing, and as hard as that was, many people will say that was the easy part. Defeating the idea of ISIL is something else. How do you do that?
Yes, of course. It's supposed to be the beginning of a long, long way to rehabilitate the Sunni society, which is supposed to be reaching a healthy society, has three main tasks. Number one, fighting terrorism. Number two, sitting down with the partners, the national partners, to talk about the power, the authority, and so on. And number three, has a very good relationship with the regional and international community. Now, to reach out such a healthy community, it needs so many work, it needs so many efforts. Definitely it will need the help of the international community, and also it needs the help of the regional players. But definitely the central government, with the local government, with the KRG, all of them has their own responsibility toward fighting the ideology. Now, how we can fight the ideology, it's a very important matter that everyone has in concern. We all know that Daesh, ISIS, is still there, and they are maybe underground, just waiting to see the failure again. If it will happen again, they will reach up to these cities and again and again. So that's why all the partners have the international, the regional, the Iraqi partners, all of them must feel that it's their own responsibility to rehabilitate the Sunni community.
Well, if you're talking about international partners, obviously the United States still has a presence there, and
yes.
They played a big part in this military defeat.
Yes,
is there enough of a political will in Washington right now, do you feel, to follow through on that?
Yeah, I think so. I think so, because I think Washington saw what's happened in 2011 when the American forces withdrew from Iraq, and we also what's happened in 2014. So why, re-image the things? Why we are returning back to the same point? I think Washington knows very well it's not only defeating Daesh military. We need to defeat Daesh in ideology. We need to make the Sunnis feel about taking part, share power, share authority in their own country. No, still Iraq is for everyone.
Hassan Ismail, as we've been reporting, the Kurdish leader Masoud Barzani is pushing for this independence referendum for the Kurds in Iraq, and it's well known that this is an ambition that they have had for a long time. But there is a concern that this is going to again go back to what I was saying before, that this could open up the old divisions again. Is this the right time to be pursuing that?
I believe this is the best time, the right time. Yeah, this is, we should do. The Iraqi federal government, they should give the right to the people to decide. Back to 2014. Why the majority of the Sunni population joined Daesh? Because, as I will repeat it again, because the bad policy of the former Iraqi government. After 100 years, after the Sykes-Picot agreement, after they forced the people to live with each other, always there was tensions, there was problems, there was fighting between the Kurds with Arab, between Sunni and Shia. As you know, the former Iraqi regime, Saddam's regime, they made genocide against Kurds. They killed 5,000 Kurdish people in 1 minute in Halabja by using chemical gas. And as you know, in 1991 till 2003, we were not independent, we were not a part of Iraq. But after 2003, after the freedom operation in Iraq, the Kurds voluntarily decided to join Iraq. But after 13 years, there was a lot of issues between the Iraqi federal government with the Kurdistan regional government. We had a good constitution. The Iraqi people, the majority of the Iraqi people voted for the Iraqi constitution. But our biggest problem with the Iraqi federal government, the constitution, because unfortunately the Iraqi federal government, they are not ready to implement the constitution, which is our biggest concern, which is our biggest problem with the Iraqi federal government. I am a member of the Peshmerga forces. By Iraqi constitution, the Peshmerga force is part of Iraqi defense system. But up to date, we never received 1 penny or $1 from the Iraqi federal government. In 1 year, they created Hajj al-Sha'bi, and they had a law for Hajj al-Sha'bi, and now Hajj al-Sha'bi, they have a big budget, and they became a strong army. So, and we have an article for the disputed area. Never the Iraqi government implemented this article. So our biggest problem with the Iraqi federal government, the constitution. And this is the right of the people. This is the democracy. Give the chance to the people to decide. And always our leadership, the people in Kurdistan, they said, we will do this peacefully. We will have a first part, we will have a negotiation with them, the Iraqi federal government. We will not do any step without the Iraqi federal government.
Matthew Glanville, we talk a lot about the battle to win hearts and minds in conflicts like this. And as a former soldier in Iraq, there was a part of the population that saw you as a kind of occupying force. How did you counter that? How do you go about this strategy of winning people over?
A lot of it is about the delivery of very basic services. Part of what went wrong with the American post-invasion policy in Iraq was that they were unable to provide very basic things like electricity, clean water, or even security on the streets. And this is the challenge of the Abadi government, that now that it's taken Mosul back, it has to ensure that the million displaced people are able to return and feel safe in their area, are able to have electricity, water, the basics of life. And certainly the British down in Basra and the Americans in Baghdad, one of the things they got wrong was the inability to provide security. And when people see a regime that is weak, either militarily or through the police, they're likely to challenge it. And that's what we saw with the rise of Islamic State and then taking over Mosul. Because the Iraqi government wasn't able to put up a strong defense, people turned to the terrorists.
Ahmed Rushdie, are there some serious lessons that need to be learned here for the government in Baghdad? I mean, don't they bear some responsibility for losing control of Mosul in the first place?
Yeah, of course, and they are harsh lessons. 3 years of being occupied by Daesh, it's a very harsh lessons to the Iraqi government first, and to the people inside Mosul also. Now, the most important thing is that how you can manage to show to the people that you learn the lessons well, is that how you can share power with the others that have been shown to be they are against you, which is also, it's supposed to be the role of the new Iraqi government, to show to the people is that we are all Iraqis, we are respecting the constitution, and we are all have our own responsibility to fight terrorism. And also, it is our responsibility that you will be safe, you will get the infrastructure, and you will be safe at your home, which is supposed to be rebuilt by the Iraqi efforts with the money of the international community.
Matthew Glanville, I'll come back to you on this. Even though ISIL has largely been defeated on the battlefield, we mentioned at the top there that the many forms that it has taken and the presence that it has in other countries, the attacks on targets in Europe and so on. There is this danger that it will simply mutate and regenerate into another form, and it will make it that much harder to defeat them.
I think we have to draw a distinction here between the purely local Iraqi and Syrian political conditions, the sense of Sunni grievance which we've seen, and the transnational jihadis. I mean, my sense is that the international fighters who went to join Islamic State from the UK, some of whom have come back, or the people who have been inspired by Islamic State, are probably people who 5 years ago or 10 years ago would have been inspired by Al-Qaeda. I think what we may see is as Islamic State loses prestige, because I think it's pretty clear that it will lose Raqqa within the next 6 months in Syria, we will see it having less influence in the international jihadi network. Though by taking ground back in Syria and Iraq, it undermines the credibility of the jihadi call, the Islamic State call for militancy internationally.
Hazhar Hamil, if I come back to you on this, if what Ahmed Rushdie was saying earlier there, that all Iraqis need to feel that they are part of a national project and they have a voice in all of this, how do you balance the interests of the Kurds, Iraqi Kurds in the north of the country, with those of the Baghdad government? How do you strike that balance so that everyone is happy?
Really, now it's too late, and we try to be a part of the Iraqi and part of the Iraqi government. We tried our best to have a new government of Iraq after 2003. Our leadership, they made their best to have a new constitution for Iraq. And we had a share of power in Baghdad, but step by step, they take the power in Baghdad, and they send our leadership, especially our ministers in Baghdad. Believe me, I was the first member who joined the new Iraqi army in 2003, just 3 months after the liberation of Iraq. I stayed almost 7 years within the Iraqi government, within the Iraqi army. I was the battalion commander in Mosul for 2 years. Believe me, after 7 years, they told me, you don't have an order from the Iraqi Ministry of Defense. When I joined the Iraqi army, there was no Iraqi Ministry of Defense. There was no Iraqi army. We created the first battalion, the new Iraqi battalion. Our battalion, it was under the 4th U.S. Division. After 7 years, they told me, you don't have an order from the Iraqi Ministry of Defense. You will not promote it. At that time, the balance within the Iraqi army, there was 25% of the Kurd. Now, if you see the balance within the Iraqi army, you have a 1 or 2 the percentage within the Iraqi army. And the Sunni, same situation. Maybe they have 8% within the Iraqi army. So right. Step by step, the Shia are controlling everything: the power, the government, the army, everything.
Ahmed Rushdie, is this part of the problem? There's too much centralized control by the government in Baghdad?
Of course, of course. It needs to be handled by the Iraqi government well. It's supposed to be a new government. The former government did so many bad things. The former government has bad relations with the Kurds, with the Sunni, even with the regional countries, and maybe even with the United States itself. That's why even Mr. Maliki won so many seats, but at the end he didn't get the prime ministry, which means that I think Mr. Abadi now has a very tough job, because he needs to secure Iraq again and need to secure the Iraqi compartments again, which means that he must sit down with the Kurds, with the Sunni in one table, and to talk about new Iraq after Daesh.
All right, and on that we're going to have to leave it. Thank you to all three of you: Ahmed Rushdie in Baghdad, Brigadier General Hazhar Ismail in Erbil, and Matthew Glanville in Lincoln in the UK via Skype. Thanks very much for being on Inside Story, and thank you as always for watching. Remember, you can see this program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. For further discussion, you can go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. We're also on Twitter. You can join the conversation there. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. You can also tweet me. My handle is @HazemSeeker. For me and the whole team here, bye for now.